It's time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online for all your website needs at sonicwebstudios.com. The Mike Wagner Show brings you interesting people doing interesting things all across the globe. Now, let's get started on the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. Also on Facebook at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can also download and listen on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. All right, we have a fine gentleman who's been in the Hollywood industry for a very long time. Actor, writer, producer, author, and whatever you can think of. He's also a film teacher over at USC, and he's directed Guilty as Charged, Oblivion, Elvira's Haunted House, and he also produced Gods and Monsters, and also involved with Brian De Palma, and many, many more. But this fine gentleman right here will tell you everything about what's been happening in Hollywood and what was his take on many films he's done, and he's also got a book we'll tell you about in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate Hollywood producer and director and a great teacher from Southern California, Sam Irvin. Sam, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, you're welcome. We're doing great here. So you've been an actor, writer, producer, author, and also a film teacher at USC. You've directed a number of films, including Elvira's Haunted House, Charge, Oblivion, many more. You've also worked with Brian De Palma, and you also have also a book that's coming out we'll talk about as well, too. And you've been in Romania also doing some work. But first, before we get into all that, tell us how you got started in the business.
Well, my father owned movie theaters in North and South Carolina, where I grew up. And so this was back in the days, long before videotape machines and stuff. So I was able to see movies all the time for free and see them as many times as I wanted. It was just kind of heaven for a kid who loved movies. And it was that sort of upbringing that got me interested in directing. When I was 8 years old, we took a trip to California, and because of my dad's connections, we got a VIP tour at Warner Brothers studio. And I walked onto the set of The Great Race, which was a huge budget movie directed by Blake Edwards. And it starred Natalie Wood, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis. And I walked in there, and in a gigantic tank of water, they had all 3 stars on an iceberg with antique cars, and they had a storm going with giant fan machines and waves and rain. And I mean, the eyes just popped right out of my head. And from then on, I wanted to direct movies, and my dad had an 8mm home movie camera. I took it out of his hands and never gave it back, and just started making little movies of my own. I was a horror film nut, so I was making Dracula films with my friends from school and lots of ketchup and that sort of thing. So that's how it all got started. And then as I got older, I went to the University of South Carolina, and I was very interested in Brian De Palma's films back then. And I managed to get in touch with him, convinced him to come out for a little festival in his honor. And so that's how I met him. And then the following summer, between my junior and senior year in college, I asked him if I could come and be a production assistant on a film he was doing in Chicago called The Fury with Kirk Douglas and John Cassavetes. And so that was my first professional gig on a film, was to go up and work on that. And from there, he hired me as his assistant, and I worked on Dress to Kill with Michael Caine and Angie Dickinson, and then I associate produced a movie that he did called Home Movies that had Kirk Douglas again. And from there, I then really focused on my directing career. I did a short film that called Double Negative that got into Sundance, and that was sort of my calling card. And got my first feature film off the ground in 1990 called Guilty as Charged with Rod Steiger and Lauren Hutton, Heather Graham, Isaac Hayes. And since then, I've done about 35 movies. A lot of them lately have been for television, a lot of Lifetime thrillers and Hallmark Christmas movies. I've done 7 now of those.
Oh, my gosh.
And so that's kind of where it's all been going. You mentioned that I did a film called Elvira's Haunted Hills, and that was a really fun project to do because it was spoofing all the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies of the 60s. And so that was so much fun to do, and she's such a funny character. Cassandra Peterson plays Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, sort of the horror host, becomes movie star. And so that's basically, what I've been doing in the film world. You mentioned that I'm an actor. I can't really say I'm an actor. What I do, I've appeared in a lot of my films, but it's kind of like the Alfred Hitchcock cameo appearances where, it's a little walk on, or I'm a cab driver or something like that.
But it's almost like a Stan Lee, you just make like a cameo appearance.
Yes,
you just hop
exactly.
in, and it's almost like the old time movies where it's like Alfred Hitchcock comes in, introduces the film, gives a little synopsis, and say thank you, enjoy, and sometimes they'll come back on at the end of the movie to recap. And of course, I also thought about this too. You mentioned Brian De Palma and a lot of his work. What's it like working with Brian De Palma?
He was so great to work with. I really think of him as my mentor, and I learned so much by just watching him in action. And being his assistant, I would be behind the scenes when he was preparing the film. He would do what's called storyboarding the movie, where he would draw little, almost like comic strip images of what was going to be shot, and all of that prep was something that I took to heart. And I'm not really an artist, so I don't draw drawings, but I do very detailed shot lists. So when I go on my shoot day, I have a very detailed kind of catalog of everything that we need to get that day with timings. I've said, okay, from 8 to 8:30, we're going to get these shots, and everybody's kind of amazed at how prepared I am and ready to go into battle. So I really did learn how to prep films from him, and it's served me well because I pride myself in always coming in on budget and on schedule, and we don't go into overtime. And it's that's what producers want, and when they hire directors, because it's very expensive and they don't want to spend any extra money that they don't have to.
And what were some of your favorite projects that you were working in terms of movies, and what do you consider the most challenging of all the movies you've directed?
Well, I did these films called Oblivion. We did 2 of them simultaneously. It was Oblivion and then its sequel, Backlash Oblivion 2. We shot those in Romania, and they were sci-fi westerns.
Oh my gosh.
And these had like a lot of special effects, but the movies were made back in the mid 90s, and it was like the last gasp before digital special effects sort of took over. So we were doing what's called stop motion animation with some of the creatures, which is what you would see, for instance, in like the original King Kong, or Ray Harryhausen was a master at stop motion animation, and he did a lot of films, the Sinbad movies and things like that in the 50s and 60s. And 1 Million Years BC with Raquel Welch, all those dinosaurs were Ray Harryhausen's work. And so we had that type of stop motion animation, which was so much fun to do. And I'm so glad that I got to kind of experience that. So that was very challenging and a lot of fun. And we had a great cast that we took over to Romania with us. We had George Takei, who everybody remembers as Sulu on Star Trek. We had Julie Newmar, who played the original Catwoman on the
Mm-hmm.
Batman TV series. We had Carl Stryken, who played Lurch in the Addams Family movies. We had Isaac Hayes, who you mainly know as the singer of Shaft.
My
One of
favorite. Yes, I love it. Yes, one of my faves.
and and gosh, we had a bunch of others. It was just really fun. It was a great thing to do, and by making two movies simultaneously, that was also a challenge. It had only been done a couple of times before then. Most famously, in the 70s, Richard Lester made The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers as one long movie when they were shooting, and then they sort of divided it into two. And that kind of started a slight trend of that happening. They tried to do it with the Christopher Reeve Superman, but they went so over budget that a lot of the footage for the second film, they kind of stopped shooting and came back to finish it later. But we did it and did it really well. And the way I looked at it, I looked at it as though it were shooting one long movie. So if we were going to be shooting in the saloon, we would shoot all the saloon scenes for both movies and then move on to the next location. So it was basically, set by set, location by location. We just would shoot out everything we needed for both films. And it was great fun.
It sounded like a great fun, too. We'll hit upon some of the movies. Maybe you can describe a little bit about it. But first of all, you listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. Also on Facebook at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can like, share episodes, and invite people to our page. And also you can download and listen on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. We're here with director Sam Irvin. He's produced and directed a number of films, including Guilty as Charged, Oblivion, Elvira's Haunted House, produced Gods and Monsters. And I just want to talk about that. You got into a production role, and tell us a little bit about that, being a producer instead of a director. So we'd like to hear more about it.
Well, I as a producer, when I was doing that for a while, I have produced a number of different films, but mainly in the management capacity, not really going out and raising the money and getting the project going, but actually being the guy who hires the crew and comes up with the budget and does all of the sort of business aspects. And I was working on a number of different projects, but the one that really stands out, as you mentioned, is Gods and Monsters. It was a film that was written and directed by Bill Condon, and it was the story of the kind of inspired by the real life James Whale, who was a director. He directed the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and Invisible Man, a lot of great films, horror films and whatnot in the early 30s. And there was a book called Father of Frankenstein that detailed the later part of his life. And this movie was an adaptation of that book. And it starred Sir Ian McKellen as James Whale, Brendan Fraser as his gardener, Lynn Redgrave as his housekeeper. And it was a drama. It was a really touching and wonderful film. And the film ended up winning a lot of critics awards, and it ended up being nominated for several Golden Globes and won the Best Supporting Actress for Lynn Redgrave. And at the Oscars, it was nominated for 3